Hey everyone, how are you doing? I'm delighted that you're here with us again on Faith to Lead. It's awesome that you're here. Every time we get together, I feel like I'm getting picked up. It doesn't matter where you are, where you're coming in, we really appreciate every chance that we get. Now today, I'm going to have a blast. So if I start laughing and all the rest of it, because I'm kind of talking to myself, I'm going to share with you some things that I've gone through as a leader. And we're going to answer this question: how can you be an exemplary leader when your team is driving you crazy, okay? And I wanted to say when your team is driving you straight crazy, because there's sometimes you're working with a group of people, you've done all that you can, and you say, these people must be insane. Either I'm insane or they're insane. So we're going to unpack that, because I'm sure just about all of us have dealt with that at some point. You know, I want to first look at a couple passages that I look at in the Bible where you can see, you know, when you think of the Bible, you think of these are holy rollers. I could never live the life they had, and they never had a bad day in their life, and they've never been angry. Well, there are some scriptures, some texts where you will see some holy men of God, and they had some feuds, some anger times. And one of those passages comes from 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verses 23 and 28. And it's basically Paul. And Paul was writing to this group of believers, this group of Christians, and he was saying, you guys have let some people in, and the people in that you're letting lead, they haven't done 90% of the things that I've done for you, and you're letting them change everything. And you can tell he was having one of those days that we all have where we say, how can the people that I've poured out so much of my life to, turn on me, forget about the things that I've done, forget about all the things we've accomplished, and start doing other things. It's really the tension that you have of when you've sacrificed a lot and you think that that sacrifice has not been valued, respected, or even appreciated. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. I call it the frustration. Why and how leaders feel unappreciated by the people who are following them. So don't forget, I want you to send in some comments. If you think that you're there, share with us some of the nuggets and the insight, how you make it through those moments, because we're all going to help each other, okay? So the first is when you read through that passage in 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verses 23 to 28, you're going to hear him use the word, the peril of this and the peril of all that I've gone through. And when you underscore all of those things, you come out with these 8 frustrations. And I want to see if you've ever gone through these 8. One of them, it's all the effort that you've done. Have you ever felt like I have poured all of my life out? I have gone above and beyond the bar for some of the people that are on this team. I've worked longer hours. I've put in more time and money. I remember the first place that I ever worked, it was a CEO, and she started the company herself. And she pulled me aside and she said, Aubrey, you see all these employees, some of them get paid more than I do. She said, on a Friday night, you know what I'm doing? I'm actually cleaning the bathroom. So I'm actually not only running the company, I'm cleaning their desks, cleaning their offices, I'm cleaning the bathroom for them, I'm paying them more. They have no idea what it's like to be a CEO who's starting a company. And sometimes in leadership, you feel frustrated because that's undervalued. I wonder if you know what I'm talking about. Some CEOs, they said, I painted the building, I put on the roof shingles, I was the first everything you've done, I had to do. And sometimes we get frustrated because we feel unappreciated because the effort that we've put into an environment hasn't been rewarded or respected. Also, number 2, you could look at all the persecution of your leadership. Paul was in prison, and Paul at one point, he said, I was whipped, I was striped, I went through so much sacrifice. And do you ever feel unappreciated because the people around you, they don't even know what you've put up with, what you had to go through, the times in your family you had to give up, the nights that you have labored and thought about what's going to happen tomorrow, the personal investments you've made for your team. That's some of the frustration that can build in a leader when their persecution, their sacrifices have not been valued. What about some of the friends, the people who turned on you, the people who said, well, if you can't hang out with me, then I'm going to be with other friends, but you've sold yourself out to that company, that business, that time, that project. So now you're frustrated because I've given up relationships for this. Or what about the ambivalence of people who are working to serve the most. The more I work hard, everyone thinks I do this just because of who I am, but I don't have another life. So they're ambivalent to the sacrifices that I've done. Personal exhaustion. Do you feel frustrated because you're saying, I'm worn out? I'm like a car who's running on E. Personal scarcity. I've seen more people that have given their life savings, every cent they have, just to grow a business for a team with the sense of a vision. Or even that sense of solitude and loneliness that tends to accompany the role. You ever have that day where you say, I'm a leader and no one on this team knows what it feels like? Everyone has their friends, their relationships. They can joke, they can laugh about things. They have a level of understanding, but no one knows the pressures that I'm under, the concerns that I have, the things that I'm worrying about, and I can't even share it with them. So I have to keep it in, have a smile on my face, and there's a certain solitude and loneliness about this position. Anyone who's a public official knows what that feels like, to have to smile when you're getting intel and information that no one else can even know about, and you have concerns, but you have to emit confidence for a greater public good. And lastly, the ongoing pressures and daily functions of your responsibilities. Some people just don't know the responsibilities and the pressures that you are encountering as a leader. So when you look at just those 8 things, there are 8 factors that I know that the Apostle Paul, he hits in that passage, but I think that they relate to many people today. And so it's like you're going into your leadership environment and you're already on E. You already have these stresses, these pressures, these forces that are working against you. Now, I want to share with you what you do with these, because we don't want to just talk about the problem. We got to address it, because if we address it, we can turn this around. And what I want to relate to you is there's also another passage in the Bible, and this actually comes out of the book of James. James chapter 1, verses 2 and 4. And it basically is this verse that says, count it all joy when you experience various trials, that the testing of your faith produces patience. And that word there, it literally means endurance. And there's a very important principle that all exemplary leaders, I believe, understand. And that's you have to embrace endurance and long-suffering. Endurance is the ability to deal with a problem and keep on dealing with it over and over again. It's like the athlete who says, I'm not a sprinter, I'm running a marathon. And when you look at yourself as a leader in your leadership or amongst your leadership teams, use these words. We embrace endurance. We're in it for the long haul. That we're going to go through some things day in and day out and day in and day out, but we won't quit. Because in the same way, when you're running a long distance race, every single step you take at a certain point, you kind of want to quit. You have to defeat that mentality in your mind that says, I can run off this track and no one will ever know. You have to stay in it. And so you want to embrace endurance and long suffering. And endurance is basically what's required for a person to get from point A to point Z. It's what will give you the resources to finish the race. It's that mindset that says there's no quitting, there's no stopping, there's no turning around. And the reason why you want to have endurance is because endurance will actually do a work in you as a leader. It will build you up. Think of a person who's lifting weights, right? I'm encouraging myself as much as I'm encouraging you right now. When you're lifting weights, it's exhausting. It's tiring. If you have to do 10 reps, and they say push this up 10 times, by the time you get to the 5th rep, you're tired, you need someone to spot you. But what happens the next time you go to the gym? When you have to do those same 10 reps, now you can get to 6. A couple days later, now you can get to 8. The last day, you can get to 10. Why? Because in all of that pressure, you were building up strength and endurance so that the next time you had to go through that same cycle, you could do more. So that those pressures actually made you stronger in the end. So that if you do that for a month, they say, we got to increase more weight because you're stronger now. Why? Because you have more endurance, because you went through those trials. Use that mentality, that metaphor, when you look at yourself in leadership. Some of the challenges that you have, some of those frustrations as you keep on dealing with them and overcoming them, you will get stronger as a leader, as a person, in your leadership. They won't seem as daunting to you in the future as they are right now. Just like there's some things that are right now, they're not as difficult as they were maybe a year ago. So you want to embrace endurance and open yourself up to those cycles. Endurance is how you deal with pressures. Long suffering is how you deal with people. That's the people that get on your nerves. Yeah, I said that. Yeah, some people, they're going to grind on you. And you want to recognize and identify what is weighing you down. Is it organizational challenges or is it people? Is it practices? Is it thoughts? Is it your own insecurities? You want to be able to identify those things and begin to recognize that your addressing of them is what's going to lead to your endurance and your strength. Second, you want to be willing to personally grow. I had several times in my life where I was in different leadership positions, and I said, I've got to go back to school for this. I said, I don't want to wing it. I don't want to just figure this out on the go. I need to improve my ability to organize, direct, manage, find out my weaknesses. And that was one of the healthiest reflections that I have. I encourage you that, you want to see in all of these frustrations and all these challenges, what areas am I being challenged to grow? If there is an area of your life that is insufficient, I've got some personal patterns of behavior, some personal idiosyncrasies, personal weaknesses. Sometimes those have to get addressed as you as a person because it'll frustrate the growth of your leadership. We could go long on that. And the last one is I want you to identify your team's development cycle and adapt your leadership style to that cycle. I'm going to say that again. You've got to recognize some things in your team. Now, I want to go scholarly on you here. And there is a chart that was done by Tuckman. It's called the Tuckman's model. And this model of leadership, it has been around for decades. And I love it because it really wasn't just started for business. It was started for small groups. But it has proven itself so much over the last few decades in organizations of any environment that I assure you it is true for yours. And what it does is that it looks at 4 essential cycles that every team goes through. And the first cycle is when people come together and you're going to say, we're going to create a new organization, a new business, a new team, a new department, whatever it is, it goes through the forming stage. The forming stage is where people don't even know who one another are. It's the first day on the job for everyone. In some places, we like to call that the exciting stage. Oh, we're going to do something new. We got a great vision statement. The team is forming. It's gelling. I've met some great people. Do you ever have a friend and on the first day on the job, they say, it's a great company? They say that on the first day. But what happens over time, right? And so you go from that forming stage, the exciting stage, into another stage. It's called the storming stage. That's when all of a sudden you realize, well, on this wonderful organization, this wonderful team or whatever it is, there's other people. And some of those things is who's going to do what? Who's on first base? Who's on second base? Who's on third base? Who's going to lead? Oh, I had a different expectation of this team. I still don't know what we're here for, how we're doing this. And there's all kinds of confusion. There's conflict on the team. That's called the storming phase. This cycle, every single unit goes through. Teams, organizations. Hey, it even works in relationships. You're going to go through a storming stage. After that storming cycle, the third is called the norming cycle. That's for those teams that actually make it that far. Because you see, a lot of teams, they blow up in the storming cycle. It didn't work, so I left. It didn't work, so I'm going somewhere else where it's better. I'm going to go to greener pastures, so to speak, and when you look at that, a lot of these things, some teams don't go through all these cycles because they self-abort or they self-destroy or they explode or implode before they get through all of these cycles. So if you can get through the storming cycle, then you get through the norming cycle. That's where individuals are now saying, you know what? All right, we had some blow-ups, but we understand one another better. Yeah, it doesn't have the same luster that it had in the beginning, but I'm going to stick it out. I didn't know that person felt that strongly about that. So at least now I know how to approach them differently. That's called the norming stage. People are now learning how to work with one another, how to work in that environment, what they're actually looking to achieve, the resources that are really available to them. That's the norming cycle. And then after the norming is when you get to the performing. That's when the team is usually clicking, when it's working well. I can tell you right now, there's many teams, organizations that never got to that performing cycle. For your business to win, it's got to get there. I believe it can. But that performing cycle is after the norms of behavior were set and established by the people on the team, not just the leader, where everyone knows how to act, how to guide, how to function, how to fit like pieces of a puzzle, where there's skill development as a team, when they know what one another's going to do, they know one another's strengths and weaknesses, where they can almost figure that out and function on a project in a way that's second nature, where it doesn't have to be discussed even. That's when you're in that high-performing stage. So when we talk about identifying areas where you're not as frustrated, you want to see each of those teams. You want to see each of those units. Now, when you look at that chart or you look at that structure, each of those you want to identify, is my team in that cycle? Is my team in the forming cycle? Is my team in the storming cycle? Is my team in the norming cycle? Or is my team in the performing cycle? And the reason why is how you lead that team changes in each of those cycles. For instance, when you look at the forming cycle that's beginning, you need to be more directive as a leader. You're going to explain through words. Hey, everybody, we just got together. We just gathered together. This is what this team is formed for. Here's how we're going to relate. Here's where all the resources are. Here's all of our procedures. You're talking, you're proclaiming, you're explaining it. But once you get out of that mode, your team will go into the storming cycle. That's when the arguments happen. That's when the conflict happens. Now your leadership style has to pivot. You're not the explainer anymore. You're now the demonstrator. I made that problem a lot. I used to go to a team meeting and think everyone's arguing. So let me bring everyone back into the conference room, explain the mission again, the vision again, tell them what they're doing wrong. Come on back in. Let Papa talk to you, that kind of thing. But that was the wrong method. Because when the team is in the storming cycle, they don't need to hear your voice. They need to see you model each role through your actions so that they know what to do. They actually need to argue amongst themselves. Yeah, that's right. I said it. They need to have some of those arguments. They need to figure this thing out. It's difficult. You're going to want to jump in to solve it, to save the day, to be the hero, to be the conflict resolution person. That's not your deal there. If you're the leader, your explaining mode was in the forming mode. In the storming mode, you're the demonstrator, okay? Show them through actions. You're now coming alongside them as a peer through the storm, being the one that consoles and say, I see what you're going through. Try it this way. Here's how I would talk to that person. And that's the way you want to lead them. When they get to that norming cycle, you want to be the guide. Consider yourself just like a tour guide leading someone to a direction. And when they get to that high-performing side, that high-performing cycle, at that juncture, you become the enabler. Just tell me what you need. How much more resources do you need? And because at that time, they really don't need an explainer. They don't need a demonstrator. They don't need a guide. They just need someone who can give them the resources to do whatever they need and to give them access to it. And not only that, this is essential. If you are a leader of a high-performing team, don't miss this. You must give them a new challenge. You must give them something that will excite them for the future. Don't let their job become routine to them. Because at a certain point, they're going to say, we've got this. We figured this out. You've got to stretch them. Say, we did this last year, so this year we're going to try to blow last year out of the water. Give them something to dream again. Stretch themselves again. Because it has been proven if you don't raise the bar on a high-performing team, it will reset. It will go back into norming and storming again. So you want to keep that vision alive. You want to stretch that team. You want to cast a new vision. You want to allow them to participate in that. See what new things haven't been ventured or done and say, now that we've mastered some things, we're going to now progress to a new level of where we are as an organization. So remember those 4 cycles. As a leader, you want to be able to recognize, where is my team? Are we forming, storming, norming, or performing? You want to adapt yourself to that team with where they are in the cycle. That will reduce the frustration. You're going to want to embrace endurance and just realize this is a marathon. I'm going to say it again. This is a marathon. By the way, I want you to share this podcast. I am sure that there are some people on your team, in your environment, that right now need to identify, are we norming, storming, forming, or performing, or are we, adjourning, what cycle we're in? And for that, you're going to have to share this podcast. You can subscribe to Faith to Lead and just send us some notes and some comments at faithtolead.com. That way you can stay up to date with all the current information so that your organization can drive and get some winning results. Don't forget that you have to embrace endurance and find the areas for your self-care. What's going to keep you going? When do you need to walk out of the office? What are some things in your personal health and well-being that make you tick, that will give you the strength and the personal stamina to stay in the role that you're in? Embrace yourself for the marathon, not for the sprint. You're going to want to keep your eyes on the end goal and withstand all the daily pressures that come with it. Sometimes we get caught up in the day-to-day, and as a leader, we forget that our job is to guide that team through these 4 steps and to start looking at what's coming ahead. And my final essential element that I think will keep you from going crazy, find a mentor. Find someone who's been there and done that is non-threatening to you, that will not find jealousy in your position, that you find that has a genuine interest and care in your success, but does not have a stake in it, that you can go to for unadulterated advice and insight and comfort. Strong mentors can save you decades. Someone who you can talk to, that with their gentle guidance, you can rely on their wisdom without questioning the validity of it or their motivation of sharing with you that wisdom. So if you can kind of follow those 6 steps, and don't forget about identifying those cycles of your team, I think these are some excellent based on scholarship ways or methods that you can to reduce the frustration you have with your team. Let me just capstone and wrap up a few things here for you. 1, leaders and followers, you got to be prepared to get tested. There is no such thing as, let me just leave here because there's a lot of problems here, and when I get somewhere else, there won't be problems there. If there are people there, there will be problems there. If you are there, there will be problems there. So at a certain point, we have to stop avoiding conflict. Am I right? We have to stop looking for a problem-free environment. And we have to realize that it's that relationship, that process between leaders and followers, by what each person is willing to bring to a team, that determines the environment that team will function in. So you've got to be prepared to be tested, to go through some things. Don't walk out of the storming cycle. Go through it. I'll say it again. When the storm hits, don't jump off the boat. Stay on the boat and make it to the other side of it. Because when you do that over and over again, you'll get to the highly performing side. With all the tests and the challenges we go through, it's painful. You remember the passages we just saw from Paul. It's frustrating. He used some strong words. If you were to ever read 2 Corinthians, it can grind on you, if I could be real. Some days you'll want to walk out and say things that you will regret. And let me tell you, I'm a senior pastor of a church, and there are days, we have a campus. It's a beautiful campus that's 52 acres. There's some days where I take steps all around that 52 acres because of some things that people say to me. My father, when he actually transferred the church and the leadership to me, he gave me a little placard, and on it said the word forgive. And I said, Dad, why would you give me that? He said, put it at the opposite of your desk so that when you're sitting down, you see that word forgive. And I was like, why? Do you think I got to talk about forgiveness more, preach about forgiveness more? Do you think there's some kingdom principle on forgiveness? He said, oh, no. He said, put that word forgive opposite your desk, because every day someone's going to sit in front of you in that desk, and you need to be able to look over their shoulder and see that word forgive. and hear the word, forgive them for what they're saying to you right now. And I still have that sign up at my desk because it can get frustrating to listen to some of the remarks, hear different people's words, hear how they're treating something that you're giving so much up for, and still having the ability to say, but I've got to look beyond this moment. I've got to look at what the big picture is. And there is no greater pasture. We have to deal with one another through this storm. Overcoming all that challenge, it results in a healthier and more united leader and followers. And it will build and establish your leadership endurance and perseverance. And finally, I'm going to just drop this nugget on you. You want to complete your maturation cycle as a leader. You want to fulfill everything that happens to your team, because it'll only happen through endurance and perseverance. It's your willingness to stay through it, to stick with it, to learn some skills that are growing because of it, identifying the cycles your team is in so you can adapt to it. If you can do that, you can get through anything. And that's the key. I hope, man, you really enjoyed this on Faith to Lead. You can share this, subscribe to it, watch it again if you have to. And drop us a note or a comment at faithtolead.com. Every day that I do this, I get an opportunity. I'm doing all kinds of consulting with businesses and organizations, some private, some faith-based, some nonprofit. I have elected officials. I learn something every day. I learn some new insight or nugget. And if you're a leader, a person contemplating leadership, or a person who feels like I'm being discouraged in the role that I'm in, I want you to be part of this community where you can share your thoughts, share your insights, share your comment, because we're all getting strengthened here. And if we're strengthened, the things and the organizations we're running will be better. Here's where we all get the faith to lead. I'll see you next time.